Alright, so moving into 2020. Wow, isn't that something? 2020 is pretty much a little over 3 years away. That's just surreal. I remember 2010 like it was yesterday, when Toy Story 3 was coming out, How to Train Your Dragon, a fourth Shrek, Disney's retelling of Rapunzel, this out-of-nowhere movie called Despicable Me. I remember those days like it was yesterday. And in fact, I was doing rambles as far back as 2010. I did a couple upcoming Disney movie rambles that included Disney Animation, Pixar, live action. I think I also talked about Marvel too. I don't remember if I did or not. Yeah, I did. But that was a little later when Disney started adding the Marvel movies to their slate. So we have, so to start off, an untitled Pixar film is set for 2020, March 13th, 2020. Now, Pixar's president Jim Morris said that after Toy Story 4 releases in 2019, back then it was Incredibles 2, but now it's Toy Story 4 because of the musical chairs, the slate change. After Toy Story 4, we're going to see 4 original movies. That's the current plan, and the whole thing with Pixar and sequels, it's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of complications. I'm just going to blow over that for now. I'll talk about that when I just talk about Pixar in general. This could be anything. Prior to what Jim Morris said, we have heard through Morris as well. I mean, Morris also said in another interview that Mark Andrews, the director of Brave, the finishing director of Brave, and Dan Scanlon, the director of Monsters University, they have original projects in development right now. Mark Andrews' project has been in development since Brave was completed, so that was finished. So he started working on that in July of 2012, and according to reports I've heard over the years, Mark Andrews' movie is going to be a sci-fi film, and that's great because Pixar only did one sci-fi film, and that was The Magnificent Wally. I'm not sure what Dan Scanlon's up to, though. I assume that Dan Scanlon started his project after he completed Monsters University in 2013. And Pete Docter has an original project in the works too. He started it around, I assume he started that around the time Inside Out was completed. But like they said, there's 4 originals stacked up, 4 originals in a row. So I'm thinking, it could be like Mark Andrews' film, then Dan Scanlon's film, then Doctor's film, whichever order. But I think it's definitely going to be, those 3. We're going to be seeing those 3 sooner than later. I don't know about any other projects in the works. I assume that, other directors, I assume Pete Sohn is going to be doing something now that The Good Dinosaur has been out for over a year. I assume that Bob Peterson is well into his next project. Even though he was removed from The Good Dinosaur, he began work on a new project, so hopefully that one works out for him. But who knows? It's up for grabs. They know, not me. I wish I was a fly on the wall at the studio. I wish I, saw some secret slate they had hanging up on their wall, but yeah. Slated for release after that is another Sony Animation film that's billed as Sony Animation franchise. Again, that leads me to believe that it's going to be based on a pre-existing IP, or it's going to be a sequel to something. It could be like a sequel to, if Smurfs The Lost Village does well, then maybe this film, slated for April 3rd of 2020, maybe that could be Smurfs Lost Village too. Who knows? And the other untitled Pixar original movie is slated for June 19th, 2020. And then we have another Illumination franchise film set for July 10th of 2020. Again, that could be a sequel, or it could be something based on a pre-existing IP, like the Cat in the Hat project that they've had, like the Cat in the Hat movie that they've had in development for a little while. And then we have another Sony Animation franchise movie set for September 25th, 2020. And then we have an untitled Disney Animation film set for November 25th of 2020. And rounding things out is an interesting one. Untitled Sony Animation Original. Yes, it's actually billed as an original and not a franchise film. This is set for December 11th, 2020. This could literally be anything. It could be Genndy Tartakovsky's Can You Imagine, if Sony allows him to make that movie. It could be Medusa, which was the movie that Lauren Faust was directing until she got booted off of it. It's still going ahead without her, as far as I know. It could be Kazorn in the Unicorn. That was Kelly Asbury's project before he was switched over to Smurfs The Lost Village. Maybe Kelly Asbury will move back to Kazorn in the Unicorn, which has been in development for quite a while. It's supposed to be like this big epic fantasy picture. He's locked up with the Smurfs right now, but after Smurfs is done, maybe he'll do Kazorn, and Kazorn will be this untitled original movie that's set for December 2020. It could literally be anything, or it could be something that has never been announced before. I'm really hoping it's Can You Imagine, because I just want to see Genndy Tartakovsky get to make a dream project like that. Genndy Tartakovsky, the poor guy, he's always screwed over. Symbionic Titan, Samurai Jack, although Samurai Jack is coming back, thankfully. And then, of course, Popeye. Sony screwed him out of Popeye. Maybe one of those untitled franchise movies is the Genndy-less Popeye movie. I don't know. But that is currently the final movie on the animation slate. No animated movie has a concrete release date past this one. Nothing set for 2021, 2022, that's still quite a ways off. So, 2020 was a breeze. Now, the individual studios, Walt Disney Animation Studios, what do they have in development? They have Frozen 2 in development. That was officially announced during the shareholder meeting in 2015, and it was inevitable because the first movie is the highest grossing animated film of all time with $1.2 billion at the box office. Disney is different now. We aren't in the Michael Eisner days anymore where sequels were relegated to straight-to-video status. If a Walt Disney Animation Studios movie is a big hit, it gets a theatrical sequel that's going to be made in-house by Walt Disney Animation Studios. None of this outsource it and, send it to another studio and, have it be just for little kids. It's going to be a legit sequel. So there's Frozen 2. There's also untitled projects from Stephen J. Anderson, who directed Winnie the Pooh and Meet the Robinsons. And there's also an untitled project that Dean Wellens has been working on for quite some time, to my understanding. He stopped the space movie that he was working on for a few years, and he's working on something completely different now. Maybe it's still a space movie, but just not the same one that he was working on before. And then, of course, it was announced the other day, Byron Howard, director of Zootopia, is working on a secret project with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda, the Hamilton creator, and the guy who did the music for Moana. That's pretty exciting. And then you also got to consider, the possibility of a second Zootopia, which could probably be here by next decade, because Zootopia made $1 billion and is Walt Disney Animation Studios' second highest earning film of all time. You can bet your bippy that they're going to make a Zootopia sequel, just not, right away, because that's the way Disney operates. There will be sequels. They're going to make them when they're ready. I mean, don't put it past Disney to make you wait till 2020 for Frozen 2. I'd be pretty content with that. But yeah, the Bancroft brothers. Tom and Tony Bancroft used to work for Walt Disney Animation Studios. Tony Bancroft himself being one of Mulan's directors, they said that Walt Disney Animation Studios has a pipeline that's a decade long. Like, their game plan is a 10-year game plan, so they have features lined up from now until 2026. Unfortunately, none of those features are going to be done in traditional animation. Such bummer news, right? But it's unsurprising to me, given the way the animation industry has been going and the way Disney's marketing and board of directors people think. They pretty much confirmed all my suspicions that I've had for years. Walt Disney Animation Studios truthfully would love to do, traditional animated movies again. John Lasseter, despite what many may think, he tried to bring it back. He wants to do it. It's the marketing people. It's the executives, it's the brass, it's the board of directors, it's all the people who couldn't care less about animation, telling them, no, CGI is the only way, no 2D. 2D is dead and obsolete. It's them who are holding it up. And it's their fault that traditional animation is still locked out of the house. But things change, strange things happen, stranger things happen. There was a time when Disney was convinced that fairy tales were no more. The marketing people told Walt Disney Animation Studios, no more fairy tales. You're wrapping it up after Tangled. But Tangled was a hit, because they couldn't cancel Tangled at the time. It was knee-deep in production, and it was right after The Princess and the Frog. The Princess and the Frog's underperformance led to all the brass people, all the execs, basically. They all said, nope, no more fairy tales. They're passé. They're dead. No one wants to see them. But they couldn't cancel Tangled, so they said, Tangled will be your last one. Tangled was a big hit. So now, you're not going to hear enough about fairy tales. I wish they didn't feel, I wish that, it's what they call conventional wisdom. And conventional wisdom is not very, wise at all. Conventional wisdom says a lot of things. Conventional wisdom said that pirate movies were box office poison and that they shouldn't ever be attempted, all because of movies like Cutthroat Island. But Disney took a big risk in 2003 and made the Pirates of the Caribbean film. It was a huge hit. They said a lot of other things were box office poison. They said the Western was out the door. Nobody was going to see Westerns anymore, but we've seen some Westerns here and there that have done pretty well. Conventional wisdom pretty much sucks. And conventional wisdom and the way these executives, think, they're the reasons why traditional animation is locked out of the house. It's not that it's dead. It's just nobody will let it come into the house. They think it should just go away, when in reality, it'll always be here to stay. And one day, it's all going to blow over, and the traditional animation is going to make some kind of a comeback, because it can't just be locked out of the house forever. Something's got to change. But this isn't about 2D, this is about upcoming Walt Disney Animation Studios movies. So yes, they have a ton of movies planned from now until 2026. They have a whole pipeline, and it's unsurprising because of their new because of their newfound success. Now, moving on to Pixar, I've already talked about, the originals they have in development. Pete Docter, director of Monsters, Inc. Up and Inside Out, he's working hard on a new original project that promises to be just as quirky and weird as Inside Out. Sign me up. I have no idea what Dan Scanlon's doing, big mystery, and supposedly Mark Andrews' project. That's going to be a sci-fi movie. I hope it's still a sci-fi movie. Pixar president Jim Morris said that the current plan is to have 4 originals in a row after 2019, the 2019 release of Toy Story 4. And I already talked about Mark Andrews and Dan Scanlon and Pete Docter, so what's the 4th original? Who's directing the 4th original? Is it going to be Pete Sohn? Is it going to be, I don't know, is it going to be Lee Unkrich? Because his Coco comes out in 2017, next year. Will it be somebody who's never directed a film at Pixar before? Will it be Brian Fee? Cars 3, which is his film, his directorial debut, that comes out next year. It could be another film for Brian Fee. Who knows? Or heck, it could be Newt. Yes, right, Newt. That project they canceled years and years ago. That project, that seemed like it had a lot of promise. It could be Newt. But given what I've heard and what I've read over the years, it seems like Pixar is just never going to revisit that one. They just didn't, they just didn't think it was going to work, so they just shelved it. No more. But again, things could change. Maybe one day somebody in the Brain Trust will say, you know what? Remember that new idea? I got a new idea for that. Let's make it work.